The unadulterated, unabashed outrage porn ovens of fake stream CIA infiltrated Operation Mockingbird MK Ultra media continue to be fanned into fever pitch flames as they continue to cash in and capitalize on the arrest of Judge Hannah Dugan, who let an undocumented man escape from ICE through her chambers. This is what Fox has to say.
You're looking live right now outside of the Milwaukee County Courthouse. Now, this is a group of Latino activists. They're protesting the arrest of Judge Hannah Dugan. And as you'll remember, the FBI arrested Dugan Friday for allegedly trying to help an illegal immigrant evade ICE. She allegedly let Eduardo Luis Flores outside of a door. It was a private door at the jury room. People don't go in and out of there. Defendants certainly don't. But in this case, Eduardo Flores Ruiz did. That's what the government's telling us. He's facing charges for almost beating his roommate to death and punching his girlfriend in the head. He was in the criminal courtroom for that reason when he was let out. Now, Judge Dugan knew those details, yet she's accused of letting him escape through that door, and the left ignored those facts. And instead,
the left ignored those facts. The left is bad, guys. The right is bad. The counterfeit news network is bad. Faux news is bad. Newsmax is bad. But let's get a perspective on this, okay? We've got the evil, wicked judge, Hannah Dugan, who looks like she's judging a case for a guy who looks like he was being evil and wicked. And then evil and wicked FBI and ATF agents and ICE agents captured the evil, wicked dude and arrest the evil, wicked judge. And now evil, wicked counterfeit news network and faux news are cashing in on the fake news that they're trying to shove down your throats. And the entire time is they're covering for the fact that, hey, if the ICE agents were worth their salt, if the ATF and the FBI wasn't so involved in domestic terrorism like what they did at Waco and Ruby Ridge, just for starters, not to mention all the people they put in prison, all the Americans they put in prison for having a little attachment on their firearm, which they have the right to keep and bear, according to the Second Amendment, which is supposed to be the supreme law of the land. If these people are not going to identify the real problem, then they are doing not just a grave disservice to Americans, but they've become the malignant cancer that America doesn't need.
What did they do? They quickly defended the judge while blasting the Trump administration for the arrest.
Of course, somebody's going to defend somebody and blast somebody else, because that's what the left versus right paradigm lie is all about. That's what it fosters. That's what it foments. We got to have the division. If you don't have the division, then you got unity. And if you have unity, then you can't have the federal government do what they're doing as far as scratching the backs of all the corporate oligarchs and the CEOs and laying cover for the Federal Reserve Zio International Banking cartel.
Now they're arresting judges, and the first felony criminal charge brought against Judge Hannah Dugan.
Oh, this guy's a fraud.
In Wisconsin is interfering with a legal proceeding, which is essentially what they've been doing all along.
I think this was a distraction from the
she's a fraud and he's a fraud.
First week.
They're Democrat frauds.
On the
Republican frauds making fun of Democrat frauds. This is great. This is great. We're really going places here in America.
Economy.
If federal enforcement agencies come to your courtroom and you help a guy escape, that is two things. One, it strikes.
Oh, a New York Slimes column. Oh, a New York Slimes columnist, also a fraud.
Me as maybe something illegal, but it also strikes me as something heroic.
The judge, the arrest of the judge in Wisconsin.
Jen Circleback Psaki and Adam Schiff for brains, also frauds. Look what the frauds are saying. Say the frauds on Fox News.
Not isolated. Felt jarring.
They relish the opportunity to go after judges.
It's not like we didn't know it was going to be terrible.
Oh my God.
And it is terrible.
She's still on fake stream media. Last I checked, she was making like $25 million a year. You know she's lying. She's got the face of a liar, and she's got the teleprompter with script writers who are lying, and she doesn't have a problem with lying because it's dangled at the end of a paycheck. That's her carrot. That's her reward in this life. Just hoodwinking the masses.
He really did have a judge arrested today. Arresting a judge today.
Judges are like the most corrupt people on the face of the planet. Why wouldn't you arrest them? Why wouldn't you dissolve the ATF and ICE and the FBI? Why wouldn't you go after politicians? I mean, if you were really a law enforcement agency that was concerned about exacting justice in America, then you would march on the White House and you would arrest all the criminals in Washington's District of Criminals. It wouldn't be a problem. Wouldn't be a problem. We can prove they're criminals.
Are you kidding me?
But not so fast. I thought no one was above the law.
No American is above the rule of
This is a load of hypocrisy.
law. The same rules apply to everyone.
No one is above the law.
The basic concept of the rule of law in our history has been the idea that no one is above the law.
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 You know why these people are saying that? Because they are the lawmakers. In other words, what they're saying to America, because I don't believe this, no, everybody's above the law. You know why? Because a law, as we know it, a law, as far as politicians know it, and as far as we should consider it being, the law is the opinions of politicians backed by the threat of unjust force and violence. That's what a law is. Everybody's above that. Laws are the opinions of politicians, guys. What the politicians are saying is nobody's above what we say. And faux news agrees with this. CNN agrees with this. Republicans agree with it. Democrats agree with it. Of course you're above the law. You're a human being. A law is just the edict of a political parasite. Yes, you are definitely above the law because you're a human being.
So that was all for Trump, but the illegal immigrants, they are above the law.
I agree. This is all shrouded in hypocrisy on the left and the right. So watch this.
These leftists. Interesting how the tune has changed. But Borders Czar Tom Homan is standing firm.
Oh, God. I can't believe there's any elected official, and especially a judge, that doesn't believe we should be doing that, and they should be helping us. What I said from day one, you can sit aside and watch, you can argue against us all you want and protest all you want, but when you cross that line, and I've said this 1,000 times, when you cross that line to impediment or knowingly harboring, concealing an illegal alien from ICE, you will be prosecuted.
How about concealing and hiding what Jeffrey Epstein did for so long? And then concealing and hiding and protecting people who were in Jeffrey Epstein's book, and they're still at large. What about that? If ICE and ATF and the FBI and the DEA really cared about the people, wouldn't they be going after the people that are found in that book? Why aren't they, Tom? Why aren't you interested in that? Why isn't the DOJ interested in this? Why isn't Kash Patel from the FBI, the director of the FBI, interested in going after the people in that book and stopping all the human trafficking? Why isn't Pam Bondi interested in this? It kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Emily, the facts of this case are shocking. I was filling in for Laura Friday, and her team did a great job in getting the arrest report for Luis. And here's what they found. He intentionally, without consent, struck someone multiple times in the body and face, causing pain and scratches during a verbal argument. And in fact, grabbed the guy's neck so the person couldn't breathe for 6 seconds is the allegation, and then went to hitting a woman. So this is the individual the left wants to defend, and the judge wants to let out the back door.
And he could be guilty, and he could be completely innocent. These could just be charges brought up by, a bitter woman or a ticked off roommate. We don't know. He could be guilty of this. He could be innocent.
He did that for attempted murder, by the way. If you're choking someone out for 6 seconds plus, that's attempted murder. I will say this. The fiction brush with which the media is using and these sobbing liberal talking heads are using, they are totally isolating and saying, a judge was arrested. Correct. And we've seen in this country, irrespective of vocations, plenty of people arrested for felonies similar like that. It doesn't matter what your day job is, guys. What matters is your behavior. And if you engage in felonious or illegal conduct, you're going to be arrested. It is laughable to me that they are somehow insinuating, and their hundreds of viewers are thus receiving the message that a judge...
Hundreds of viewers. Little slap at CNN right there. They have hundreds of viewers. We have millions. And speaking of the fiction brush, nobody wields the fiction brush better than Faux News and the Counterfeit News Network and ABC, because they're always broadcasting crap.
was arrested for refusing to comply with President Trump's or the law enforcement agency's executions of the orders. That's not what happened. A judge was arrested for breaking the law. And I would love to see, final thought, an interview, not with talking heads or...
Nobody should be arrested for breaking the law. Because you can break a law like, let's see, freeing the slaves, and you haven't committed anything arrest worthy. If you're freeing slaves and the government says, you better not free slaves because if you do, we'll hang you, then you're doing a righteous thing. These people equate law and legality on the same level as morality, and illegality they equate with immorality. So if you committed that which is declared illegal, i.e. freeing the slaves, you've done what is illegal and you should be in prison. That's how these people think of it. They want to lock you into a left versus right dichotomy, a false choice dichotomy where, hey, you got to agree with us that if you broke the law, you need to go to jail. No, if you committed a crime, which means you left a real material victim, then you should go to jail. If you harm somebody, if you threaten them, if you damage their property, if you stole their property, then you should pay for it and go to jail.
Bleeding liberals or any of these people, but I would love to see the interviews of those two victims, the one who was almost beaten to death and the girlfriend, so they can testify as to how it feels to have the perp be let free because someone has a conscience.
How about all the American victims who are beaten black and blue by the Thin Blue Line gang when they've done nothing wrong? How about all the American victims who've been imprisoned by all these black robe tyrants of these district and circuit courts? They should all be rounded up and they should be made to pay for the Kevin Stricklands of this world who went to jail for 42 years for a crime he didn't commit, as just one example. We have 2.3 million people incarcerated in the prison systems in America. That's why we call it Incarceration Nation. We incarcerate more people here in America, land of the free, home of the brave, than communist China does. Let that sink in for a second.
Despicable.
Molly, this isn't the first time this happened. I was really struck by this passage from
They're really making mountains out of molehills here.
NBC. Here's what it said. In 2019, during Trump's first term, the U.S. attorney in Boston charged a Massachusetts judge and a court officer with obstruction of justice for allegedly aiding an undocumented immigrant in leaving the courthouse through a back exit to avoid arrest. But listen to this. Prosecutors reached a deal to drop the charges in 2022 under then President Joe Biden's administration, with the case instead going to review at the State Judicial Commission. So President Biden just let this person off.
Yeah, this is fascinating. It started out in 2018 when Judge...
And guess who Trump let off? Guess who Trump's AG? Guess who the Attorney General of Florida let off for such a long time and then gave him a sweetheart deal under one of Trump's attorneys? That's Jeffrey Epstein, guys. Why do we forget this? Yeah, what they're saying is true. If this is an activist judge, if this chick, Hannah Dugan, is an activist judge and she's doing things that are not only less than judicial, but immoral. If she's doing immoral things, if she's harboring people who are actually criminals, then she is committing a criminal offense and she's harming society. But hey, let's take an honest look at this. Republicans do the exact same thing. They were harboring a guy for 8 years. And you know they had to know that Dennis Hastert was a serial child molester, and yet he was the Speaker of the House, the second in line to become the President of the United States for 8 frickin' years, and they did nothing about it.
Shelley Joseph was accused of working with the court officer in her courtroom to help an illegal immigrant who was there in her courtroom that day, a Dominican man that was facing drug charges, slip out of a Sally Port door. It took weeks for ICE to catch up with that individual. In the case with Dugan, they got him down the street immediately that day. In this case, the individual was on the run for several weeks at least. Ultimately, she was charged. This judge in Massachusetts, Shelley Joseph, was charged. It was conspiracy and obstruction of justice charges. She went in and out of the federal courthouse, reporters all around. Those charges, as you mentioned, were dropped, and she went to this judicial commission where she was ultimately put forward as willful judicial misconduct by the commission that's looking at this case. It's fascinating. And Lelling at that time had said, this is the most fascinating part, that he does not believe that this was the only case. He believed there had been other instances potentially that had occurred.
Wow. Whoa, man. Wait a minute. What about the massive widespread theft of all Americans under the Federal Reserve Act and the income tax and the IRS? What about all those people who have been threatened and harmed by the injustice system? What about the massive transfer of wealth and power by the Trump administration in the first term? We're talking about $6.2, not million, not billion, but $1 trillion with the signing of one document. What about all that? Oh, they don't want to mention that because, hey, that would take away their gravy train. They'd have to hop off. They'd have to stop getting their bread buttered by generating all these clicks through outrage porn. Fake, hypocritical outrage porn, I might add.
No, I was just going to say.
And look at Larry Kudlow sitting there exactly like all these. Can you imagine being the only dude in the room sitting there along with all these women sitting exactly like them? It's hilarious.
This Judge Dugan, I thought the ICE and DEA agents had an arrest warrant for the illegal.
They did. That's why they went there.
That's where we relegated humanity to the illegal. He's illegal. I'm not. I'm legal. I'm approved by the government. I got my papers. But him, he's an illegal.
She put them down.
It was an administrative warrant. Yeah.
So therefore, her job is not a judicial decision. Certainly not an ideological political decision. All she had to do was administer the warrant.
Right.
So therefore, she's in a heap of trouble. I don't know how anybody can argue against that. Just a simple fact. They can't. You walk in, here's your warrant. Under Section 287G of the Immigration and Naturalization Act, the local officials are permitted to work with the federal agents. So,
but what does the Constitution say? What does the Bill of Rights say?
The federal agents did everything according to Hoyle. It was the judge who spoiled the party and let him out the side door. And my last point is, I wanted to meet the ICE agent who beat him on foot.
Look,
he could run a 220 or a 440.
Yeah, it's impressive.
Fast. He could be an Olympic type runner.
The 287G is the very part that sanctuary cities and jurisdictions are frustrating right now.
Right.
That's the part of the law that they're stepping on. That's why it's such a big deal.
That's why.
To make a point of we're going to do it differently now, you're actually going to have to follow the law.
She can't interfere with that. We don't
even need new law on that.
That's
one.
right.
We just need for them to do their jobs.
That's my point.
So, the big part, and I so appreciate what Emily said. She would have prosecuted this for attempted murder because the guy was choked out for 6 seconds. He was deported in 2013. What was he doing here?
Yep.
I mean, this is disgusting. How many times are we going to face a situation where we have had time and time again?
He was deported in 2013 and he's here. Looks like border checkpoints ain't working. But guess what? Border checkpoints are being used against Americans miles, 50, 100 miles from the border. Let that sink. Put that in your pipe and smoke it.
To get somebody out of the country before they commit more violence. But this is important too. What happens?
The government, who specializes in initiating force and violence, wants to get rid of violence in America.
If that individual goes out, you said in another case it took them weeks to get the guy. This one they got in a matter of minutes.
He had been previously deported as well.
But in this case, what if that guy had gone outside and hurt somebody else? Can we sue the judge? Can there be civil judgments against the judge and anybody else in that hallway who was holding at bay the ICE agents while she allegedly scurried the illegal immigrant out the door?
Yeah, we don't want that illegal immigrant running out of that courtroom because he could hurt somebody. Oh, wait. He was being chased by the FBI and the ATF, who specialize in hurting people. They actually killed 20 people in Waco, 20 kids in Waco. Total of 76, 20 of them were children. They laid a 50-something day siege against people who just wanted to be left alone, who were stockpiling weapons, which, back then, in the 1990s, we had a Second Amendment then too. Right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So the ATF and the FBI were there to infringe on people's rights, and they took lives away. But we're worried about this one immigrant when we have a whole alphabet soup agency who specializes in terrorizing Americans. One of the biggest, most powerful domestic terror cells known in the world. Leave your thoughts about this in the comments section below. What do you think about the fake stream media outrage porn that they're trying to use to divide more Americans with this Hannah Dugan issue? If you want to support this channel, you can do it for free. Just like this video, share this video, comment on this video, and get the algorithmic juices flowing. And if you want to support the channel, I have links in the description for you. I appreciate you being here, appreciate you watching and sharing, and I will see you in the next one.